And we'll start with the material passports, which will be presented by Lars. Lars works for EPEA Netherlands. He has a background in industrial ecology, implementing ecological principles and industrial systems. He is taking the lead in implementing the material passports in the BAMB project, and please welcome him to hear his presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. So as mentioned, and as you have heard before, I'll give you an introduction to special interest group number 1 on materials passports. This first slide is just to give a quick introduction. So I'm working for EPEA, and to sketch a bit of the context that you already saw in the previous presentation by Caroline. EPEA is involved in a lot of the work packages within the project, but one where which we really highlight is work package 2. It's the work package on materials passports, and we have the lead in that one. Within work package 2, we're working in close collaboration with IBM and Sunderhuis, and we're working with TUM, with Dres & Sommer at Arubis, and with BAMB also in that work package, so the work package on materials passports. I won't spend a lot of time on this slide, but it's just to give that connection, that special interest group 1 on materials passports, work package 2 on materials passports. Right next to this, you see work package 3, which Caroline introduced, and the way it's connected to the rest of the BAMB project. Thanks to the presentation by Katja and Caroline earlier, you've already seen 2 of these quotes that I will highlight in order to explain materials passports in a bit more detail. This first one, I'll just take 2 seconds to actually go over it and then explain it in a bit more detail. So what are the aims and objectives of materials passports in this project? They are to make and implement electronic materials passports, enabling circular product design, material recovery, and chain of possession partnerships, improving quality, value, and security of material supplies. And we aim to achieve this through a couple of sub-objectives, which I'll come back to. But first I want to explain a little bit more what does this full sentence actually mean instead of just skipping over it. We're trying to enable circular product design. And why is this needed? It's because currently many products that are used in the built environment, they are not developed, they're not designed for circularity. They're not designed for value recovery or for recycling or to be able to take them outside of a building or disassemble them. Of course, there are the front runners, but it's currently not the business as usual. So we want to enable material recovery. This is connected to product design, of course. We see that currently in the built industry, there's very little recycling on a high level. There's a lot of downcycling. This image that you see is probably very recognizable. It's what we're currently talking about when talking about recycling in the building industry. It's turning a building into road filling. And of course, there we can also talk about the front runners in, for instance, in product design. And then we're talking about cradle-to-cradle products. So of course, as EPEA, we have a lot of experience with cradle-to-cradle and with cradle-to-cradle certification. But we see that even in these products that are optimized for material health and for recovery, for recyclability, reutilization in general, that this potential is even in these products not always put to their full potential. It's not completely utilized. So there are steps to make there as well. It's part of the reason why we wanted to improve this, is because we saw that there was a gap to fill. And we want to enable chain of possession partnerships. This was highlighted earlier as well. It's not hard to see that collaboration is required throughout the value chain. But this is a bit of why this is necessary. So there's a general lack of information. There is a lack of information on products and their residual values. There is a lack of information on many aspects of products and materials in buildings. And I'll give a couple of examples of that later on in this presentation. But there's also a lack of information on the materials themselves and their composition, and I'll come back to that as well. And besides that, there are general communicational challenges, and that has a lot to do with information sharing, with what information is shared, how it's shared, and to who it is shared in the value chain of buildings. Coming back, after that slight elaboration to the sub-objectives. So we want to achieve all of this with these sub-objectives. And the way it's set up from top to the bottom, it's a bit like our methodology of how to achieve this. So we start with fully understanding materials passports, who is using it, how is it positioned in the current market, what are the stakeholders involved, what are the use cases? So in what ways are stakeholders using materials passports in the end? What data are they able to deliver into the platform? What information are they looking at to be able to use? And that's a very interesting process going through that. And we're using that to develop the criteria. So actually developing the materials passports themselves, understanding what is needed in order to have them operational and usable by a wide variety of stakeholders. And continuing with that, there will be a piece of software connected to it. So this is what we call the software platform or the materials passports platform. It's the software that will allow us to, and you, to actually look at the passports, to develop the passports, to generate the passports, to enter the data, for instance. And that's what we'll also do within this project. So we're not only talking about how to make passports, we're also actually going to do that. We do that by setting a deadline for the development of the passport framework and for the software platform, and then actually go ahead and make quite a set of these passports. So in the generation of the passports, you of course have to think about the data collection for them, probably some assessment that needs to be done on this data, and actually entering the data into the software platform. And because of this, because of actually making quite a set of passports throughout the project, a very important task that we'll focus on as well is a continuous updating of the conceptual framework for passports, so that we take everything that we're learning in the project, in making these passports, in the interaction with stakeholders, in what we learn that stakeholders need from this platform. We take it into account in this continuous updating of the conceptual framework. And this all ends up in the project as 4 key deliverables for this work package 2. So first we have a user requirements report. So this is looking at the stakeholders and what they expect from materials passports. I know there are some in the room that were involved in our activities for this report already. So there was a very interesting workshop at the IBM headquarters in Amsterdam, and quite a set of interviews that we held with a wide variety of stakeholders throughout the value chain of a building, in which we specifically put effort into giving a proper understanding of materials passports before having the interviews and before having the workshop, so that there would be an educated feedback on what would be expected from materials passports, from the software, and from the way people want to interact with it. The next one is the conceptual framework. In essence, this is on a very basic level, the description of the passport. So this is the part that will be continuously updating. So this is describing exactly what I mentioned previously. So who is using it, in what way, what data is sitting in the platform, and who is getting what information out of it, and how actually do these materials passports achieve the result of recovering value from buildings as materials banks. The next section I mentioned is the software platform connected to this. And then the last part is the 300, at least 300 passports that we're actually generating in this project, backed up, of course, by data sitting on this platform. I was asked to include a section on key terms and concepts for this special interest group on materials passports. So the obvious one to include is materials passports, but I actually also keep it restricted to this one, as it's complicated enough. And if you take home one message from this, I think a proper understanding of materials passports as they are developed in BAMB would be quite sufficient for my purposes. And in order to see to understand this a bit, first to take a quick step back from where these materials passports are coming from. You saw this in the presentation by Katja already. In the last slide, there was a link to a publication published in 2012. This one was originally called, or originally about nutrient certificates, and eventually these were called materials passports. And this is something that was used in also in the writing of the proposals for the project. So you see a couple of terms that we see recently popping up with thematic connections to materials passports. But in order to understand what we really mean with materials passports in the context of BAMB, let's take a quick look at this publication. So it was called Resource Repletion, Role of Buildings and Introducing Nutrient Certificates, also known as materials passports, as a counterpart to emission trading schemes. This was, as I mentioned, published in 2012 by Katja Hansen, by Douglas Mulhall, and by Michael Braungart. And I want to take a look actually only at this definition for materials passports from that publication. As it's quite a read, I'll focus on this highlighted section. So this is saying, as it's a nice summary of the full description. So it's saying nutrient certificates, materials passports, are sets of data describing defined characteristics of materials and products that give them value for recovery and reuse. And if you have paid attention, you saw this also in Katja's presentation, this quote. So now to the actual question. So what is it? It's quite abstract if you're looking at if you're just reading this. So what do you really have to keep in mind when thinking about materials passports? Because a common misunderstanding that we see is that people think it's a list of ingredients. It's a list of the materials used to make a product, or it's a list of the materials that are inside of a building. And in order to understand that it needs to be more than that, I'll go through some more exploration of why that would be the case. So first to highlight what is in the product or in the building as a material, as the composition of these products is very important indeed. I have this slide. So what is in a product or a building does, of course, determine its health impact as well as its reusability. For the health case, if you have a carcinogenic material, you put it inside of a product, of course your product will be carcinogenic. If you take that product, you put it inside of a building where a user is exposed to it, you're deteriorating the environment in which these people are working or living. It seems very obvious, but sometimes it's good to revisit that. And the second part on recycling, reusability. If you are recycling undefined materials, so materials for which you do not know the composition, you're doing most often one of two things. Either you're downcycling the material that you have, if it's a good quality, or you're polluting a defined stream, actually downcycling that stream as you're reutilizing this. So knowing the composition of materials, of products inside of buildings is essential, but the context is very important. And this is something that needs to be taken into account while we're developing these materials passports in this project. So here you see an example of a building with some key figures of what is sitting inside this building, and some questions that need to come up are, okay, so this is very nice, but where are all these materials sitting? How are they connected to the building? You can go through the list, and there are many more that are connected to this. So can it be recycled? Can you get it out in bulk, or is it distributed along many products? And can you take these products apart? Those are essential questions that materials passports will need to be able to provide an answer to. Otherwise, you just know what is in your building and you have no knowledge of how to recover the value from those materials. This is a visualization of this materials passports platform. It's sitting in the middle of this slide, and it's to show how, in answering these questions, various stakeholders on the right-hand side will be interested in different sets of the information that we will be able to generate with the materials passport platform. They are posing different questions that we saw on the previous slide. So there's a big list of questions. We want to answer all of them, but some of them are more relevant to certain stakeholders than for others, and we want to accommodate for that. And on the left-hand side, you see that there are, of course, many existing data inputs that we can utilize. There will be some overlap between the data we want to have sitting in the materials passport platform and data that might be already available. So in order not to have to collect all the data within the project itself. But the essential takeaway from this slide is diverse inputs into the platform, diverse outputs as information to the stakeholders. And then one last slide on, so who are these stakeholders? Well, it's you, of course. It's a variety of stakeholders who are involved throughout the value chain of products in buildings and of buildings. Because there is such an extensive chain of stakeholders connected to materials and buildings, this is also the wide variety of stakeholders that we want to address with materials passports. And then connected to that, I would like to invite you all to check out this special interest group 1 on materials passports. So to subscribe to the stakeholder network and also to the special interest group 1. And there are two, there will be more, but right now there are mainly two topics that may be of interest to already think about how to be involved with materials passports. The first one is a specific task within work package 2. It's about creating circular supplier communities, and we do this through circular supplier community workshops. The goal of this is to engage stakeholders and to help understand the value that materials passports can bring for these diverse stakeholders. And the next action that is within this generation of this rather large set of 300 materials passports within the project. So this might be most relevant for producers or suppliers. but can be relevant for many stakeholders. But to actually get involved with the production, the generation of these passports, and they will be might be relevant, and you'll hear about that more in the talk on the pilots a little later. This will also be done for a couple of the pilot projects that we're working on. So that might be a very interesting way to get involved. So please get involved. That's my my invitation. And I want to thank you very much for the attention for this.
Thank you, Lars.